Welcome to another edition of Auritas Insights. I have with me today Mani Ramaswamy.
Deepak, nice to be here.
Mani is the CTO of Auritas, comes with decades of experience in process and AP automation. And today it's going to be a really insightful conversation. I am looking forward to our exchange.
Me too, Deepak. So keep the questions coming.
One of the major topics, in our conversations with our customer base comes around implementing Procure-to-Pay and Source-to-Pay solutions. Mm-hmm. There are different options that are available in the market. And many times it is quite difficult to pick the right solution for the right business scenarios. What's your take on that?
Yeah, great question, Deepak. P2P is complex. And a lot of times, historically, right, we see customers focusing on one area or the other, mm-hmm. right? Sometimes it's very procurement focused, sometimes it's like finance, so therefore invoice automation focused. But they leave some of the other critical components unaddressed, and therefore they're also not getting end-to-end value in all of this. Really, there's not a one-size-fits-all, like I said, and that's largely dictated by the process footprint. So you have to compose a solution suite, if you may, to deliver the final business outcomes.
So companies will have to implement different solutions to address their procure-to-pay and source-to-pay requirements. Mm-hmm. How many solutions for a large organization are available, and how many solutions do they need to implement at any particular point of time?
Yeah, great question. It's not a one solution fits all. Mm-hmm. Simply because, like I said, the process could start in the business network, right, in Ariba. Sometimes procurement is driven through MRP, mm-hmm. Planned production processes, that's an S4. Finance is an S4 typically, right? So as you can tell, the process is not centered in one place. So what we want to do is select products that are best of breed to deliver best-in-class outcomes, right? And in our experience, that is an ideal combination of components within SAP Ariba, also called, the spend management or the business network. There is OpenText Invoice Management, intelligent accruals, and last but not least, Taulia, which is now part of Ariba, for supply chain financing needs.
In essence, you're suggesting that all of those solutions will add a tremendous value to the organization, and they need to implement all of them, or some organizations can pick and choose?
Some organizations can pick and choose, certainly, depending on how big they are and where the value is, and we are happy to do a business case for them to help them, guide their investment. But for the typical enterprise, this composition of solutions makes a lot of sense.
I'm finding a lot of companies, early on, either implemented a solution with, say, vendor invoice management, mm-hmm. or they decided to go the Ariba route. Mm-hmm. And as they move on, as we look at and explore their business processes, they identify gaps in either of the solutions, or, like if they have implemented vendor invoice management versus Ariba, there are gaps between the two. Mm-hmm. What's your take on this?
There will be gaps, because Ariba's origins were focused on indirect procurement. Mm-hmm. So it does a fantastic job. It's a business network, but the strength of the business network is unparalleled. Mm-hmm. It facilitates a lot of indirect procurement natively. But when it comes to invoicing, it does not address all of the needs of a finance organization in a holistic manner.
I see.
Right? Also, when it comes to delivering best-in-class outcomes, right, which is in invoicing terms, is pure automation. Mm-hmm. It has its shortcomings, right? And hence, what we call the hybrid solution, right, for P2P, has OpenText Invoice Management featuring in that list.
I gotcha. So it's a blended approach that you are recommending between deployment of the Ariba solutions and vendor invoice management.
That is correct.
Is there any quantifiable ROI in putting these two together?
For sure. I've talked about ROI in broadly three areas. I've talked about ROI upstream, mm-hmm. in sourcing and procurement, right? On an average, companies save 20% of their what they spend, right? So for a company that's doing $1 billion, the rule of thumb is they spend about 500 million, right? And generating creating a 20% saving on that 500 million is huge for the company. You move to finance, we've talked about 60 to 80% invoice automation. That means that 60 to 80% of the invoices simply just get posted touchlessly, right? That's cost takeout, that's productivity release for the finance teams. They have less, they can do more with less.
So touchless means there is no human intervention.
Just no human intervention, right?
So the invoice comes in, it gets OCR'd, we recognize the content of the invoice, and it gets processed automatically.
Yeah, we have two concepts. We have something called first pass, and we have something called a second pass, right? Both of these are essentially forms of touchless automation, where finance is not involved in processing that invoice.
Wow.
So that is bankable ROI for finance right there.
Right.
And then you go to Taulia or supply chain financing, right? That's not productivity. That's taking your payables and earning an APR on that. If I'm the customer, my treasury department now starts to function like a bank. I'm earning money on my payables.
Oh, that by itself is a very strong ROI.
It's very huge.
Let's talk a little bit about OpenText Vim. You have implemented so many projects flawlessly. But in spite of all those implementations, there are still some gaps, some white spaces, I would say, where the customers can increase their efficiencies. Accruals, for example. Can you provide some insights on it?
Yeah, great. So we found this, as you know, Deepak, we found this white space. We know it's existed. We've solved this about 4 years ago. Out of that is born our intelligent accrual engine. It really addresses this in twofold. There's an invoice accrual component and a PO accrual component. The invoice accrual component simply accrues for any in-flight invoice that is unposted within the Vim domain at the end of a financial close period. PO accrual does the same thing, except it does it for estimated performance liability on a PO. If I cut a PO to a vendor who's building some equipment for me or building a plant for me, right? The entire PO might live for years, right? But as the vendor performs on that PO, right, before the invoice arrives, I'm expected to record that expense on my books.
I gotcha.
That's essentially the concept of PO accruals. It's very cumbersome, and our solution really delivers an excellent automation tool to address both these issues.
That must be saving so much time and efficiency, both for the folks who are processing their PO accruals and invoice accruals.
Yeah, terrific ROI for accounting, but it seamlessly integrates, it addresses a lot of the PO owners via its workflow concept.
What about the solution you just mentioned about Taulia that SAP acquired a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
How does it add value in this whole combination?
Yeah, it's icing on the cake.
Really?
So if I have to start the process, everything starts with sourcing, right? A company has a lot of core supply chain needs. A company also engages in what we call indirect buying. And everyone in the company can have a need for indirect goods or services. So we try to get favorable prices, right, through strategic sourcing into the supply chain by delivering catalogs for indirect buying, and that's value accrued, in the sourcing and procurement area. You then move through to invoicing. That's efficiency. I talked about the results we've had. That's efficiency for finance.
Right.
And then the icing on the cake is Taulia. What Taulia, Taulia delivers supply chain financing. It really turns procurement and AP into a profit center. You actually make money on your own payables, which is fantastic, right? So in some ways that can actually pay for, the project by itself.
I see. So in other terms, you can take dynamic discounts, you can determine when exactly you can secure some discounts from your vendors for early payments, and that by itself can create an ROI of implementing these projects together.
Absolutely. Taulia's strength is, when they say supply chain financing, it's about flipping an invoice, offering early payments to a vendor, and in return charging an APR, a better APR than the vendor may have access to, with his banks. But supply chain financing can also move further upstream. I can actually, finance your true supply chain. So when I as the customer cuts you a PO, right? You need cash flow to fulfill that PO.
Right.
I could potentially finance that too.
We are living in terrific times. I mean, a lot of automation coming along. I have to ask you a question. Where does AI come into all the processes that you're trying to automate?
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Look, across the board, when it comes to operational anything, we have agentic AI, which is pervasive in an enterprise, right? We have chatbots that can support operational procurement. We can have agentic AI that delivers self-service functions for AP. Essentially reducing, the old days we used to have portals, and vendors would come to these portals to get invoice status. Well, guess what? They can now go to an agentic AI and get that information right there. I talked about intelligent accruals, right? And the intelligence is because it tries to guess what the performance liability might have been through intelligent mechanisms and through past performance, right? If a requisitioner performed or prescribed a certain accrual amount in the past period, it learns through that. And it knows to bring it back in an intelligent way.
Very good. Mani, these are exciting time for CFOs. I mean, not only the processes that are getting automated, but the technology is really assisting them to not only make real-time decisions, but also have a really accurate projection of how things are going to be for their organizations. We talked about multiple tools here, but what are the additional things they can do? How are the different tools and products helping them even make these functions better? And I'm asking with an intent that, let's say they have implemented Ariba, let's say they have implemented Taulia and vendor invoice management solution.
The hybrid play.
Right, the hybrid play. What more? What else can they do?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. Great times for CFO, great times for SAP, because now they can truly answer a CFO's needs, like you said, right? And we talked well about the ROI, we talked about what constitutes hybrid, but there's also other areas of adjacency that can be addressed, right? One area that we've uncovered recently, and this is an extremely good pivotal use, but pivoting from the traditional AP invoice automation use case to ESG data capture, right? So carbon footprint data, as you know, is very key for leading organizations to report on. We've actually been able to leverage Vim and OCR capabilities to capture carbon footprint data and integrate that to SAP's sustainability control tower.
Oh, yes.
Right? That's a mandate for the Office of the CFO. So truly great times for the Office of the CFO, like you said. And then in terms of areas of adjacency, right, if you want to really complete the solution and be compliant, Vertex, tax software. Obviously, you use it for AR, but adding it to AP ensures you're globally compliant, right? And you have a truly end-to-end, fully addressed, compliant process as far as finance is concerned and P2P is concerned.
Very good. Very insightful conversation here, Mani. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. Looking forward to seeing you on another edition of Auritas Insights.